The following report contains some graphic images.
People are dying. People are dying. People are dying. Look at my money law. They came my money law.
This is how it ends. This is how a daughter must bid farewell to her mother. Across the country, people alive and dead are being taken away like this. And even after death, Ebola robs its victims of their dignity. The team will take a sample back for testing in a lab. Mapping this outbreak is crucial if the epidemic is to be contained. But even more important is making sure that the community understands what is happening and that everything is documented.
To produce the death certificate indicating the cause of death.
Getting out of the biochemical hazard suits is the most dangerous part of the whole process. As each layer is peeled off, a sprayer decontaminates his colleague with chlorine. One slip could have fatal consequences. This job is not for the faint-hearted.
What I do, I make myself brave to disinfect the room.
Is it sometimes difficult to make yourself brave?
Most especially when it comes to humanitarian assistance, we should make ourselves brave.
Last week, we met a woman with courage in abundance. We followed Laureen Wisser and her ambulance crew as they went in to remove a suspected Ebola patient from her home. Every day, Laureen comes face to face with the terrible reality of Ebola. On this occasion, we asked her to wear a small camera. The patient is lying on a mattress. It is stained with her sweat and other bodily fluids. It's soaked with the virus. The woman's name is Annie. More than 30 other tenants live in this cramped, shared house. But Annie is alone. Her boyfriend ran off when her symptoms became acute. She's 38 years old and she's fighting for her life. We spoke to one of her housemates, Patience Kise.
And you live together with her?
Yeah, we live together.
Yeah.
She tells us Annie is a food seller at the local market. She has no children, no family in Monrovia at all. Annie is stretchered into the ambulance and driven away. Amid the chaos of the outbreak, health facilities have become overloaded and people can be difficult to trace. 2 days later, we go off in search of Annie. We visit one of the main Ebola treatment centres run by the World Health Organization.
We're actually looking for a patient who was brought into an ETU. We think it could have been this one.
There they tell us they can't disclose any information, citing patient confidentiality. But even family members sometimes find it impossible to get news of their relatives once they're admitted to the clinics. In Logan Town, we meet Dayon Musa. This neighbourhood has been hard hit by the outbreak. Some weeks ago, 2 of Mrs. Musa's sons developed Ebola-like symptoms. They were taken to a treatment centre. Then they vanished. I searched everywhere, she says. I checked the lists at all the clinics and they weren't there. Ebola has already claimed the lives of Mrs. Musa's husband and 3 other children. Desperately, against the odds, she clings to the hope that her 2 sons may have survived. If they tell me my children are dead, she says, I'll accept that. I just need to know. Mrs. Musa's elder son, Sembe, has a girlfriend. Her name is Winnie, and they have a 4-year-old boy.
People, even I go somewhere, said they can dress fire.
I can't let him go, she says. I see him every night in my dreams. Winnie has been thrown out of her home, and her relatives don't want her coming round anymore. Ebola and the fear of Ebola are tearing families apart.
And this is not an isolated case. We've heard other stories, both in this neighbourhood and other parts of Monrovia, of relatives, loved ones disappearing. What's happening is that people are going into these Ebola treatment centres, and some of them are simply disappearing without trace.
Our search for Annie continues. We're driving across town to find Laureen Wisser. She's the nurse who stretchered Annie into the ambulance and took her to a treatment centre. She should be able to tell us which one. On the way, we're overtaken by a pickup truck laden with orange body bags.
Well, there must be, well, at least 4 bodies, probably more, piled on the back of that truck. They're being driven around over these bumpy roads, jostling against each other, all completely in the open, in the heart of this city.
Laureen is at home.
Yeah.
She's been attacked while collecting another Ebola patient.
You look like you're limping a bit.
Some fear the treatment centres almost as much as the virus itself. They fear disappearing into the system and never coming out. She's in pain, she says, but her suit was not ripped in the assault, and so she should be safe from the virus. Laureen tells us she delivered Annie to a clinic run by the charity Médecins Sans Frontières.
Roughly what time did you drop her off at the clinic? Because we're trying to find her and we can't.
The
Nobody seems to know where she
time,
is.
it was 4 to 5. It was after 4:30 p.m.
Did she regain consciousness at all, or was she still unconscious?
No. She was very bad. She was even gasping.
It's probably the best run facility in town. If she is there, she'll be in good hands. But when we call MSF, they tell us no one by that name has been admitted. We drive back to Annie's neighbourhood. It's an area called Red Light, controlled by gangs of former soldiers from Liberia's civil war. Annie earned her living here selling beans, spaghetti and milk. We're looking for her housemate, Patience, whom we met earlier. She's a juice seller here. We make contact with her, and she agrees to meet us back outside the home she shares with Annie. And Patience has news.
Yeah, I think she went to the hospital, they put a call, and they told her that she didn't make it.
She didn't make it.
Yes.
The people from the hospital called, she says. She didn't
What do you
make
feel
it.
about that?
I feel bad.
Annie died the day after being admitted. The mattress on which she struggled through the last days of her life has been dragged out into the yard. The rest of her belongings have been dumped behind an outhouse. Patience says she has no plans to move out of the house they shared. Life goes on. Annie is no longer one of the missing. As she joins the growing list of the dead, the outbreak shows no sign of abating.